Live from Studio 550, this is the board meeting on KTRS.
9:08 Thursday, and the St. Louis Bread Company spread was so good last week that we want to thank them again this week. We're supposed to have St. Louis Bread Company cups. Aha. I haven't picked them up yet.
Okay.
But they're coming.
Get on that.
Welcome to the board meeting. Tony Messenger is at the dentist.
That's good.
So he'd rather be at the dentist than hang out with us for an hour.
Wow. Well,
So
karma.
What does that tell you? It's the board meeting, and that voice is former Chief of Staff for Governor Holden, Jane Dueker. Jane, good morning.
Good morning, McGraw.
On the phone, traveling, fixing the state, is House Majority Leader John Diehl. John Diehl, good morning this morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
You're not driving while talking, are you?
No, I am not. I'm actually sitting at a Hilton Garden Inn having a nice cup of Hilton Garden Inn coffee. It's primo.
All right, fair enough.
It's no Panera.
It's no Panera. And, of course, local attorney, filmmaker, and one heck of a guy, Jay Kanzler. Jay, good morning this morning.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning,
We'll start with you, Jay Kanzler. You formally ran for this position as auditor. Now, Tom Schweik comes out with an audit of the city of St. Louis schools. What are your thoughts?
Well, Auditor Schweik did an audit of the St. Louis public schools, and the Post-Dispatch reported on that yesterday. And just a couple of points. Obviously, it was not a good audit, but the audit found that more than 2,000 students in grades 3 through 8 received the lowest rating possible on the 2011-2012 communication arts sections of the assessment test. In other words, more than 2,000 students couldn't basically read or write at their grade level, were a grade or so behind. And instead of keeping those students back and teaching them to read, all but a couple hundred of those were passed on to the next grade. Now, the response of the school district was, well, full compliance with the law, that is that these kids should be able to read and write, would be too costly. But they said additional and targeted help, every student who is behind in reading, is available. The audit then went on to say, well, you have lots of programs. What are they? And the audit said that the firm hired by the school district to determine whether or not these programs were effective, they started talking to the people in charge of the program, and the firm found that administration was unaware of the nature or location of about 1,000 of those programs. It's more evidence that the St. Louis public schools are broken, and we can go ahead and we can build and develop ballpark villages, and Mr. McKee can build his housing and his commercial development, all good things, but the anchor around the ankle of the city of St. Louis is its schools. We are never going to be the city we were or city we could be until someone gets their arms around the city of St. Louis public schools. And it's not about money. It's not about money. Rockwood spends about $9,300 per student. The city of St. Louis per student spends $15,600. The dropout rate in 2011 for the city of St. Louis, 50%. The dropout rate in Rockwood, less than 10%. So this constant more money, it just isn't the answer.
Jane Dueker, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a good idea for the auditor to be looking at some of these programs. But I also think that, a performance audit that pulls out a couple statistics doesn't move the ball as far as coming up with a plan for urban education. So while I appreciate, the statistics, I agree with Jay that, there has to be a plan here. And urban education is extremely difficult, and we have to come up with some innovative solutions. And it's not necessarily money, but it might be. But the problem is we just don't know. And when you have complex problems involving poverty and drugs and gangs and trying to,
And 40-something different languages.
Right. And you're trying to, educate these kids. And let's face it, the ones that can get out are getting out. And so, the district is left with the hardest to teach. And so now, that doesn't mean that I think it's not fundamentally broken. It's still fundamentally broken. But, it's not going to be a simple wand, and it's not going to be, we'll just start cutting money. I mean, we need a full-blown plan, and it is difficult. And, I used to work with a school in North St. Louis, poorest zip code in the state, and they have 53 kids, and they have a 90% graduation rate. And they have kids that are 3 grade levels behind, but they teach them. And De La Salle Middle is an urban education experiment. It's not an experiment. They're 10 years in, and it's working. These kids can be taught, but they do 10 months of school. They do 10 hours a day. There's some individualized programs, and kids are flighted. And, they really, they jump in. It's doable.
How much do you pay per student there?
Well, those kids, everybody has to try to pay tuition, but it costs because we follow these kids, even though it's a middle school, we follow these kids through college, and we give them support all the way through so that,
How much per
so
pupil?
it's about 10 or 11,000.
10 or 11,000.
But it's worth it. If you could tell people that was the amount and it worked.
But it's less than what the city of St. Louis is charging.
Correct.
Yeah.
And here's what I guess, Jay, and I agree it's not an easy problem, but I'm tired of hearing that, it's a hard problem.
We need a plan.
You know what? We need
I
a plan. We need to fix it. Is it any harder than curing AIDS? Is it any harder than finding, treatments for cancer, than putting someone on the moon, putting the entire music library of the entire world on a little box of, 1 inch by 1 inch? No. Fix it. That's the problem.
And it's time on task.
Let's go to House Majority Leader John Diehl by phone. John, what are your thoughts as you listen?
So many things to weigh in on here. One, I absolutely agree that it's not a money issue. It's an accountability issue. And what we've had here is decades in that school system where nobody's held accountable for the actions or the results. And I think the existing, the administrative board now, there's some good people on there, and they're trying to make some progress. But they're dealing with a house whose, foundation has collapsed. And they can only do so much. This whole idea of social promotion needs to be looked at very, very hard. I know Jamila Nasheed, the senator from St. Louis City, has been talking about. We need to stop promoting kids just because they get older, because you never hold the families responsible, you never hold the teachers responsible, and you never hold the administrators responsible. Of all the things I read, I think we all knew there was money mismanaged. I think we all knew that there are a lot of administrative things that had to be fixed. But what shocked me the most was all the kids that were just socially promoting because they passed a checkpoint in their age.
Well, and I want to give credit to the Special Administrative Board, who have done very good work in getting just sort of the basics, the financials, the administrative stuff in order. They have done yeoman's work, and these are people who are dedicated and doing it for the right reasons. And, I've worked with them personally, but you're right. Now it comes to the educating, and we've got to get to that piece.
Why does this school have partial accreditation if their dropout rate is at 50%? Why? There's some kid there who's stuck going to a school who should be going to Francis Howell, who should be going to Kirkwood, but because they have some made-up partial accreditation, they're stuck in a failing school district.
And it is made up. That's what's really frustrating to me.
Right.
There's nothing in the statute that talks about provisional. You're either credited or you're not.
Or that authorizes that.
Right. And so, and I think it was a game to play to say we're not going to lapse this district because we don't have a plan.
Right. And I think another thing that you see, too, I've heard is interesting about the city of St. Louis schools is the kind of the splits among different schools. Some schools are actually functional within the school district, and some are just complete, utter disasters. And so how do you deal with the schools and not punish the schools in the neighborhoods within the city that are doing fairly well?
And the MAP scores, you just got to go look at them.
Can't get it together, right?
But
But they all get lumped together though for the purpose of whether or not the school district's accredited.
That's a great point. And the point is though, if you look at these 2,000 kids who didn't pass and these 50% kids who drop out, if you took a look at where they're coming from, right? Chances are they're coming from failing families, failing homes, failing situations where no one's
failing schools.
And but because of that, right? There are these kids who are sitting right next to them that are graduating, that are doing okay. So is the teacher failing? Because the teacher's teaching one kid in that class, but not teaching the other kid. So is it the teacher's fault, or is it all the other problems that walks in with that kid?
I don't think you can make any generalization.
Either way, right? That's the point.
You just have to know that there's certain checkpoints you have to go through, and you don't. The same other hand, McGraw. If you have two kids, one from a good family doing well, and one from a poor family not doing well, one can read, one can't read. How are we doing the kid any favors by just moving them on?
Well, you can't
to the
have.
next level.
Well, you cannot have 1 in 2 kids who are supposed to get a high school education not get a high school education. It's unacceptable, and anybody who says different is wrong, and anyone who says, well, we're getting there, is not taking it serious enough.
But what's the alternative? Do you have a Will Ferrell 25-year-old third grader? I mean, what if the third grader should be in 6th grade and he's still in 3rd grade? I mean, that's a whole other problem.
Well, but then you have the whole situation where, if you've got somebody that has a learning disability, and you're dealing with a situation where, you have unique circumstances and you have what's called an individual education plan, and those sorts of things are supposed to help with that situation. And so, you don't know. That's the problem, is you don't know why these kids aren't.
Right, but the 3rd grader who gets left behind is now taking a seat from a 2nd grader who passed, who's now in 3rd grade. So you can't have. I mean, it's a logistical nightmare.
There's something called summer school
to hold back 2,000 kids.
Right, but there are things that have been and can be done to prevent everybody from staying in the same grade. I can't believe that's the only answer, is to just leave them back.
That's Jane Dueker. Jay Kanzler's with us. John Diehl is somewhere in Missouri at a Holiday Inn Express drinking a cup of coffee. Hopefully it's Panera Catering. We'll come back more with the board meeting on the Big 550 KTRS. Has a roundtable on his radio program for years, so with all apologies to Frank Cusimano, we do like to call it the roundtable just to tweak people all around town, but it's officially called McGraw's board meeting. We're in session. John Diehl is by phone House Majority Leader, getting ready for the veto session. We'll talk about that with him later on next week or the week after that. Local attorney and filmmaker Jay Kanzler, and Jane Dueker, former chief of staff of Governor Holden, local attorney, local mom. You are involved directly with this Ellisville case and the Walmart, so we're going to talk about it, but let's disclose that you're a part of it.
I am.
1, and then 2, you have some news for us?
Yeah, well, I represent the citizens. And one citizen in particular in reference to challenging the conditional use permit for the building of the Walmart out in Ellisville. And so at 12:01 this morning, their conditional use permit expired.
12:01 this morning.
Yes. So it expires on September 5th, and that happened at 12:01. And so, so it's far from over. Now, they did generate a lot of activity over the weekend, trying to secure some parcels and trying to move some dirt in an attempt to extend this conditional use permit. The unfortunate part, went to the city council meeting last night. One, the council voted to draft a preliminary resolution to terminate the city manager, which I think is long overdue and a good decision, because I think, part of the reason why this has gotten to the point that it's gotten to is because there were people inside the administration that were going to barrel this through no matter what.
So they fired the city manager?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, they have to go through some procedures, but yes, they've initiated that process. And
his name is Kevin Bookout.
Kevin Bookout,
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. And so anyway, but a lot of last night was dedicated to, there's an apartment complex that's within the project area. And so Sansone acquired 2 parcels, but they were commercial pieces. But the apartment complex, all havoc is broken loose, because landlords now are trying to throw people out. They're boarding up windows. And none of this property's been acquired by Sansone yet. I mean, this is like Sunset happening again. So the property's not bought, but these people have been sitting around for a year waiting, and they have tenants and they don't want to release because they're afraid their property's going to go. So now they had one woman had gotten home from the ICU 3 days before, and they said, you have 72 hours to leave. They don't know that they don't have the ability to say no. There's a relocation specialist that's required by state law to deal with this issue, but that person's not triggered until the property actually changes hands. So you have absolute chaos going on over there.
There was the STL.com, the PD said that Sansone might break ground today?
Yeah, first of all, I think even if they did some of the partial construction that they're threatening to do, it doesn't extend the permit, because moving dirt does not mean they're pursuing the project diligently in order to get a Walmart built.
So you're saying
But it's a game.
This permit has expired. Therefore, are you saying, as the attorney for the citizens, that there will be no Ellisville Walmart until they reissue a permit?
They have to reapply, in my opinion, absolutely. And that's what we're going to be maintaining, is that this is over, and they're going to have to reapply.
So you're saying it's over?
Yes. And last night we also called on the council to go ahead and terminate the redevelopment agreement and get that TIF money gone. And it's time to go back to square one, guys.
John Diehl, you sit and watch this as a state legislator. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's just a mess. It's a circus out there. I understand the concerns of also they've got a bunch of property out there, particularly some of the old car dealerships that have gone by the wayside out there. But it just seems to me that this has not been handled or managed very well. I don't think that using tips for projects like this is a good use of tip money. We have too much hopscotching going along, particularly on Manchester Road.
Yeah, stealing from each other.
That needs to be that needs to be stopped and reined in. So, Jay's obviously much more in the weeds on this than I am, so I can't.
But it sounds
one way or the other. But
it sounds to me like if you're throwing out old ladies walking in from the ICU, something's gone wrong here.
Right, and that's the chaos that right.
No, not about this. That's what's happening. Yeah, that's just.
And what's interesting
wrong.
about it is the redevelopment agreement and the ordinances and everything in place are designed to prevent this. But, it requires, and that's one of the reasons I think he was actually started termination process, is this is the exact things that these documents were designed to prevent happening. They were supposed to acquire all the property before they got a construction permit. But when you barrel parts of it through without forcing these people to actually play by the rules, that's when you get utter chaos. And that's when now property values are going down, windows are getting boarded up. I mean, that's illegal in Ellisville to board up windows in apartments. I mean, you're not supposed to be able to do that. And so, that's why, and I agree. I mean,
how many people live in this apartment complex?
Oh, I mean, I think there's like 8 or 12 buildings, and then there's probably 4 or 5 apartments in each.
So you're looking at...
I mean, there's a lot of people. Now, some of the owners are holding out now. Some of the owners are like, you know what, we're sort of done. Our options have lapsed, and we don't believe that these people are actually really going to put up or shut up. And so now you have complete and utter chaos.
So some people have sold out. Other people aren't going to sell out. Some people are waiting for the offer.
It's sunset all over again.
Or Hadley Heights, which finally is coming along. You see the process of, I don't know, doing it right, but getting things in order before you move forward with it. My question is, when did the people lose control of their government?
Hold on a second. John, hold on a second. Have Jay go on.
When did and how did the people of Ellisville lose control of their government? I mean,
strong city manager. It's a different kind of municipal government where the electeds have so much less power, and so that's why it's taken so long, because you had to reelect a whole new mayor. You reelected a mayor, had to reelect, or elect three new.
You had to get him unimpeached.
Unimpeached. I mean, you're right, and the citizens, I give them credit, because I can't believe they've stuck with it for this long, and they are still bound and determined. We are going to take this government back, and if it weren't for them, this would all happen. And so you see a lot of bad things of democracy, but I will tell you, those citizens are not tinfoil hat people. They're like, we're going to hold you accountable. And every time they come to the meeting and said, Matt Perillo, you said you would resign if the mayor got reinstated. Why are you still here? And they hold them accountable. They're trying.
They've also voted consistently. Every time somebody's ran against this Walmart and against this TIF, they have won.
Right, and they make it clear, and and so they are doing their best to take it back. And so it's taken too long, though.
John Diehl, your thoughts?
Well, development, having someone, I've sat on a city council before, and developments that change the character and nature of a city need to be thought out very carefully, and they need to include a lot of input from the residents and the various stakeholders up and down. I agree with the comment that Jay made before that this just appears to have been kind of rushed through and gone too quickly without laying the proper groundwork as to why it's needed, whether it was justified, and more importantly, the financing mechanisms behind it. Is it really necessary?
Jane Dueker with some, I guess that's some breaking news, right?
Yeah.
Jane Dueker, the attorney for the residents, says since the conditional use permit is elapsed, the Walmart deal is dead.
Right.
Now, that's according to you.
Correct.
Somebody else might say something differently, but
Well,
that's according to you.
Right, and I think the city attorney did say after the meeting last night, late, 10:30, 11 o'clock, that the city is going to be taking some action, and we should know soon what that's going to be. And so I suspect the city's going to state its position soon.
All right, that's Jane Dueker. John Diehl's on the phone. We'll come back. We'll have his story coming up here. And then Jay Kanzler, local attorney, local gadfly, local filmmaker, former gadfly. That's a compliment in some societies.
As far as you know.
That's right. 9:33. The board meeting in session. 9:39. Big 550 KTRS. Jane Dueker is here along with Jay Kanzler, and John Diehl is on phone. The board meeting in session. I want to bring up Syria. And one, I think every time we go, well, not every time we go to war, but it seems like this 10-7 Senate vote was not along party lines. Many Democrats voted against President Obama, and quite a few Republicans voted in favor with President Obama. It seems like that this is falling all over the place. It seems like the far right and the far left actually agree, and the center is kind of holding. John Boehner, Speaker of the House, came out and said he is going to support some type of airstrike. I don't know the answer. I know everyone has an opinion. I think every opinion is valid. But my point is this. If during the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, we said, we don't want to tell the bad guys when we're leaving, so we're not going to set a timeline. We don't want to tell them how we're going to bomb, so we're not going to, signal to our enemies what's going to happen. Why are we debating a 90-day air war in which President Obama is not allowed to use troops on the ground, and after 90 days, we're going to leave?
Well, that's the problem I have. One thing, though, I am heartened by the fact that this it doesn't seem to be a partisan, screaming. People are actually talking about the substance. Yes, I agree. But I like, this seems more substantive than most of the things that have been talked about recently. And good ideas are coming from all over the spectrum, and good discussions coming from all over the spectrum. So I am glad about that. But it seems to me that this is just one big cosmetic fig leaf, and it's designed not to work. I mean, like you say, if you don't know what the goal is, what are we doing? If we're just going in to punish, that's sort of a joke. And you're right. If we don't have, and McCain's stuck in that language about, trying to change the dynamic of it and help the rebels win. And I'm like, wait a minute here. Now we're going from just punishing to, are we really going to change the Civil War here? Which is why this is such a nightmare, because this is a no-win. If I thought that we could go in there and actually achieve a goal that actually addresses our national interest, I'd be okay with it. But the problem is there is no defined goal, which means you can't achieve anything when there's no goal. And I think that, I think right now I've not heard enough to say that this is a good idea.
John Diehl?
Well, one, I agree with a lot of what Jane says on this. Number one, we can't be the policeman for the woman. And if we're going to go into a situation like this, I think it's the obligation and the duty of the president to lay out a clear case of why we're doing it, what the consequences are, one way or the other, okay, and what it is that we are attempting to accomplish. We need to learn from mistakes that we've made in the past. I think that's part of the reason that you see the splits the way that they are. Is I don't think that case has been laid out. Also too, it's kind of interesting. We really haven't talked about it. I don't think people know the answer to this, but where do these chemical weapons come from?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
Are they come from Russia, or were they the
Iran?
Chemical weapons that were missing from Iraq?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you remember back when we started the Iraq conflict, that there were always stories about were these things being moved across the border to Syria. That's part of the case and part of the process, and the buy-in. When we went into the other two conflicts, there was a lot of buy-in from the allies. No doubt the United States took the lead on it, but there was a lot of buy-in from allies, and there was a lot of other support, cover, and boots on the ground. Given the dynamics involving Russia and the whole, Middle East situation. Syria is not Iraq, it's not Iran. They're very different places. And, we need to tread, I think, very carefully and have a clear-cut goal and a clear-cut picture of what it is we're trying to accomplish.
Jay Kanzler.
President Obama gave his red line or line in the sand comment, and that's one of the main reasons we're talking about this. He has been an utter failure in the foreign policy. The best he's been able to pull together in terms of allies is France. We talked about people made fun of George Bush's coalition of the willing. What we have here is a coalition of the unwilling. If we're going to go arm in arm into a conflict with France as our partners, we're in real trouble.
It's not that different.
Well,
and that's why we should have learned.
But here's the problem. President Obama is reaping what he has sown. He has not done the things necessary to build those alliances, to make his case. After his news conference on Saturday, he went and played golf. Those aren't the kind of things. We have a world crisis, apparently.
The House wouldn't come back from vacation. I mean, that's the kind of sniping that's just nonsense.
But where are those trips? Where are the meetings? Where are the phone calls to build the coalition other than France?
Well,
that makes it a bad idea. That's why we're having the discussion, and that's why Congress is in on the discussion now. Let's get to that.
No, Congress is in on the discussion because President Obama changed his mind. He went in to Libya without congressional approval. He saw it a bad idea and decided to put it off onto Congress because he didn't want to take the heat for it.
Well, do you want him to have the authority or not?
Can we have John Diehl make some sense out of all this? Go ahead, John.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to weigh in where Jay is on this. By drawing a line in the sand, okay, you're saying, and this is the President of the United States of America, saying that if you go this way, we're going to do something, okay? Well, that line in the sand was crossed. Now, my fear is, look at our intelligence failures in Benghazi, our recent intelligence failures in Egypt, okay? How do we know what really, and I don't think anybody really knows what happened here on the ground in Syria.
Oh, I think it's pretty well documented. Doctors Without Borders, other people. We have video of these kids foaming at the mouth. I don't think anybody's questioning that chemical weapons were used.
That, but who's responsible for it? I don't know that there's been a clear-cut explanation as to who's responsible for it. And that's the problem with drawing lines in the sand like that on something where there may or may not be a compelling national interest for us to step into it.
Well, there were reports months and months ago that he had used chemical weapons. Right. There was no video, and I think once the video surfaced, now there's a
He's
sort of
in a corner.
Right. But I'm not against him bombing. The question is, what are you going to bomb? He can't go after he can't go after quote unquote regime change. So you can't target the guy,
right?
And you can't target the chemical weapons factories because that will then release the chemicals into the air, which will kill
and they're moving
more people.
them now that we've warned them.
Right.
So
and they will just put people at the other sites, innocent people,
right?
As human shields.
So what do you bomb? And then once you bomb,
then what?
If he uses them again 3 months from now, then what happens?
Exactly.
So,
and now I agree with you that drawing the line was really dumb, and I think, frankly, he's hoping Congress lets him off the hook, and I understand, and I think it's fair game to criticize him for that. But I also think to say that this becomes a better or a good idea if he had done things differently.
But
that's garbage.
How many people does he gas before we go in?
Well, how many people does he shoot in the head?
All right,
I mean, people,
great question. How many?
You know
people?
what I mean? I don't know why I have trouble saying that somehow killing people with gas is worse or better than killing people with bullets. I mean, the bottom line is the guy is killing.
How many people does he kill before the world community steps in and says that's enough?
It's
well, 500,000
ask
were
the people in Darfur,
and
right?
Rwanda,
right?
We did nothing.
We've seen genocide before, and we haven't been able to take care of it. But we have to know that what we're going to do makes sense. It doesn't do any good to jump in if you're not going to stop the problem.
Are we going to treat our men and women in boots on the ground as policemen, or are they there to protect militarily the strategic interests of the United States.
Okay, but that's okay. The strategic interests of the United States. Since we know Syria has these chemical weapons and is using
So do
them.
we.
Okay, it's not that hard to smuggle then a canister out of Syria and put it on a plane and have it land here in St. Louis.
And whether we bomb or not, that's still a risk.
I understand that,
Case,
but
and that's the case that has to be made. Why is it a risk to the United States? Great Britain has chemical weapons. I'm
Right.
sorry. Okay, do we go? Granted, over years, so I know the situation's different. But there are a lot of places that have a lot of really bad things.
Mm-hmm.
What is the strategic? And I'm not saying it's not there, but that case
I just haven't
been
seen
made.
it. Right.
if we went in to get them in Iraq, what's different with Syria?
Well, they weren't in Iraq.
Well, but we
remember?
thought they were.
We don't
we
know
thought
yet.
they were.
Yeah.
They now might be in Syria.
Right.
But if we went in to get them in Iraq, why are we second guessing ourselves to go in and get them in Syria?
Because it was
I
a
think-
mistake.
Well, also too, okay, there was a long lead up to that. Okay, there was, whether you want to armchair quarterback Iraq or not, there was a lot of international buy-in on that.
Right.
Okay, and there was a history of that prior regime using those types of things, okay, on the Kurds and being aggressive towards neighbors. Now, whether that's right or wrong in retrospect, that's for the historians to shake out. But there was a long case made over almost a decade.
But it's the same case we made over Syria. We know they're using them against their own people.
Right.
We know they have them.
How is that the
What's
United States
threat to
interest?
the United States?
Right.
Again,
That's the difficulty I'm having. Is
Again,
saying,
I don't see a lot. I know, and I'll get the last word on this. I know it's a different country. I know there's oil in one and not oil in another. I know we had a long history with Iraq. I know that we supported them when they used chemical weapons on their own people. But the question is, we went into Iraq because they had weapons of mass destruction, and in a post-9/11 world, we need to protect our own interests. I don't see the difference with Syria. Back in a moment on the Big 550 KT. 9:53, our remaining moments on the board meeting here on the Big 550 KTRS. Tony Messenger so wanted to be here, but he decided to go to his dentist instead of being here. So a root canal is better than hanging out with us. He'll be here next week. Jay Kanzler filling in his place. John Diehl by phone, and Jane Dueker, former chief of staff. Jane, you have a parting shot?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of discussion over the weekend, social media and otherwise, regarding the editorial in the Post. That's why I wish Tony was here, about the discussions about the city-county merger, whatever, reentry, whatever the latest buzzword is for it. And Tony made some good points about, in the editorial, some good points about it. It's time to get that out in the sunshine. It's time. Clearly, those discussions are going on, and clearly there's, a group of people having that discussion. And I think it's really important that everybody be aware that this is, being proposed and being pursued. And it may be a great policy. It may be, but I think that discussion needs to happen in the open air.
In a general sense, are you in favor of a city-county merger?
Well, that's just it. I don't know yet. I mean, obviously finding synergies and finding efficiencies between, that's, reducing the size of government when you can. Absolutely. That's all great stuff. But I think there's a lot of details here. There's a lot of history over 100 years when they've been separated. And I think, and the devil is always in the details. And I think, again, sort of like Ellisville, if you try to shove something down people's throat, sometimes it's the way you do it, not what you're doing. And I hope that people focus on process as much as they focus on everything else, so that this can be a better decision, a better process.
John Diehl, in abstract, are you in favor of a city-county merger?
Oh, I think a merger has serious problems, so we don't have the facts on it yet. I support to the extent we can get efficiencies, like on the crime lab that we talked about last week, and issues like that. I think that's something that we can talk about, but a merger is very premature to discuss.
There you go. Jay Kanzler, your thoughts?
I agree with both Jane and John.
There you go.
There you go.
Don't hurt yourself straddling the fence over there, Jay Kanzler. In abstract,
Well,
wouldn't it be?
But back to a parting shot. I mean, we'll look at our theme today. Whether it's this, okay, whether it's Syria, whether it's something as local as Walmart and Ellisville, public officials have the obligation to to come up with a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then the plan has to be clearly vetted out in public with sunshine, and lay
Make
the
your
case
case
out to the people that represent why it needs to be done. Otherwise, you're just making broad statements without having the benefit of the facts, and you get situations like we have with Walmart, Syria, or city-county merger. Nobody knows what it is everybody's talking about.
That's John Diehl. We'll leave it there. House Majority Leader. There's a reason why he's a House Majority Leader. John Diehl, thanks for checking in. Drive safe. Jay Kanzler, local attorney, filmmaker, all-around gadfly, sitting on the fence, ripped his pants.
Ouch.
And former chief of staff of Governor Holden, and all-around one heck of a lady who wore her pants today. Ladies and gentlemen, Jane Dueker. Thank you for listening. Thank you for calling. The board meeting is over.